Good morning and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be discussing Section 8 housing and the tenant-based voucher or the tenant-based voucher program. It goes by the abbreviation TBV, and it is not going to be the same as project-based housing. There's definitely some big differences with both, but for today's purposes, we're just going to talk about tenant-based vouchers. So what are tenant-based vouchers? It's like any other voucher. It provides affordable, safe housing for low-income families, and that's usually what it's supposed to do. That's not always the case. Now, the one thing I want to tell you about tenant-based vouchers is, unlike project-based vouchers, you're able to go out and find a landlord. You're able to go out and find the property. So ultimately, it is your responsibility to make sure that you're looking at the Google reviews, if it's going to be a big corporate building or complex, or if it's going to be a house in a neighborhood. You need to go out and visit on the weekends at night and ensure there's not a lot of criminal activity going on. Now, if you have done all of those things, I would say that tenant-based vouchers are probably a pretty good deal. Another thing that I should make you aware of is, unlike project-based housing, tenant-based vouchers can be portable, which means you can move anywhere inside the United States, including Hawaii and Puerto Rico, if you want to live on a tropical island. Now, there is a process to go through in order to get portability, and I should tell you, sometimes it's not that easy. So, now, most of you, whether you're new or old on my channel, know that I am a consultant, and I have been doing it 15 years, and I charge a very small fee for that, and I assist people with a number of factors like portability, giving them advice on how to even get a voucher. There are hundreds of types of vouchers that are given by housing authorities, and so my success rate with that is usually around 97%. And I've been able to do things in such a way where you're able to cut down a 10-year waiting list. Sometimes I've had people in little as 6 days get special purpose vouchers, and others may wait weeks or months, and in some rarer cases, years, okay? So sometimes having a consultant or a housing advocate on your side is usually the best investment you'll make to speed up this process. Now, with all that being said, let's go ahead and move on. So, what organizations are eligible to apply for tenant-based vouchers from HUD? Well, PHAs, private housing authorities. All housing authorities are private. They're usually owned by the city. If it's not owned by the city or the state, then it may be a nonprofit. And I should tell you that the nonprofits tend to be a little bit more unscrupulous than the rest. So hopefully you're only dealing with the state or the city. So, and it also really just depends on the funding as well. So, now another thing about tenant-based vouchers is these are not ever going to be owned by the housing authority. So, with project-based vouchers, housing authorities can often chip in money. They buy a whole complex, and then, they're also your landlord, which is really, in my opinion, not the best way to go. So how do PHAs apply for tenant-based voucher funding? Well, they apply through the state and federal grants. So every year Congress goes in and they approve a budget, and then they allocate those funds to each state, which administers those to the county, and then so on, okay? Now, let's talk about eligibility and families and who's going to be able to get these tenant-based vouchers. So usually the very low income. And so if your family's income is 50% below what other people make in the area, so let's just say your zip code 77085, and everybody's making $100,000, as long as your income is below $50,000 or below, then it would be applicable to you. But that's not the only incomes they will accept. In a few specific categories, families can, with incomes of 80% of the median income. And these include those that are already assisted under the 1937 Housing Act, such as families that are displaced by demolition, hurricanes, fires. There's a lot of different things. So if you're already in the system and you lose your housing for whatever natural reason, then they're able to issue one, obviously, for you. Now, one thing that's misconstrued about vouchers, a lot of people think just because there's a waiting list or there's a closed waiting list that there's no vouchers available. Look, there's an allocation somewhere between 7 to 15% of all vouchers always exist. They're always there. Now, the housing authority may pretend that they have none left, but they're always there, okay? Those are called special purpose, and they're not going to advertise or post a list on the building saying, hey, please come apply, even though we're telling everybody else it's closed. But make no mistake, if you're a consultant like me, I understand where those vouchers are and how to get them, even on a closed waiting list. Next thing I want to talk about is how does a family, how do they determine eligibility? Well, it's very simple. They're going to look at your income, whether or not you have a criminal record. And of course, there's a whole slew of other things, but most of them aren't that important. Um, Eligibility, some of the eligibility criteria usually lean towards age and also whether or not you've been a member of the service, whether you're homeless. And so there are specific factors that you could include that will definitely impact how this works out for you. Again, that's back to that consulting aspect. It comes down to having the right set of answers. If you don't have the right set of answers, then this could be a pretty perilous project that takes a long time. Okay. So we're going to move on. How does the family obtain an apartment once they have a voucher? Well, it's very simple. You go out in the same way you would find any apartment. You have to look for people that are participating in the program. If they're not, then there's a way, whether you know how to do it or not. This is called RTF packets, and you can talk to the landlord, see if they'd be willing to participate in the program. We get an RTF packet and then get them to fill it out and go through an inspection. So there's a bit of a process there. If you don't understand it, as I always mention, try to find somebody that does, or try to research it yourself. Okay. How much does the rent cover? Well, it's 30% of the adjusted family income, okay? So if you're a family with children and a wife, that's fine. If you have an aid worker or stuff like that living there, those incomes are not considered. So it's actually just the family. So if it's a counselor, social worker, whatever it may be, or any type of aid worker, those people that tend to often live in the second bedroom, they may help you if you're paraplegic or paralyzed or whatever it may be. That their incomes are not factored in, but you still must report that, obviously. But now, do families have to lease a unit in the jurisdiction where the PHA is issued the voucher? So PHAs I had mentioned, those are housing authorities. So it's like this. The answer to that is no. A family may choose a unit anywhere in the United States where there is a PHA that is administering funds. But make no mistake, you can't apply in Seattle and then expect Seattle to pay for your voucher, and then you hop in your car and you drive to Georgia. Okay, you need to accept it within the the housing authority's jurisdiction. Typically, they want you to complete about 12 months, and then you have some portability, and then you can move along. Okay, so do not be fooled into believing that the minute you get this, you're just going to be able to drive out the state to another housing authority's jurisdiction. Okay, so it's transferable, it's portable, but only after you meet certain requirements. And that, like I said, that's a whole nother video that I've already posted. What are the regulations of the program? We'll look at subsection 24 CFR Part 982. Okay, so this is going to be the Federal Regulations Guide under Title 24 and Part 982. For those of you that are not legal beagles, I'm not going to bother going through that excerpt part of that because it's about 100 pages. But if you ever wanted to copy paste that in there, you can find all this information at the bottom of the video, or at least most of it, and you can take a look at that. But I think we're going to cover this adequately in this video. What is the difference between tenant-based housing, project-based housing, and their waiting list? Look, there's a big difference. Okay, so we already know what tenant-based vouchers do. We know that they're portable. We also know that project-based vouchers are not portable. They have to actually be turned into either tenant-based or HCB. So it's a process there, as I'd mentioned, and it's not for the light of heart. If you don't know what you're doing, then it's going to be a little bit of a task. Okay. The other things with that is, the waiting list is simply a waiting list. The only way to improve your situation, the waiting list, is knowing what the preferences are, what the special features. So if you have special issues, one of those things may set you up to go higher up the list. That's where I'm an expert in that area. I know kind of what those things should be and how you should be answering on the application. I've got a lot of people, older seniors, they tend to be more stubborn. Let me do it my way. I've signed up for 30 different waiting lists, and I'm waiting. And I'm like, well, you're going to wait a lifetime because you're not giving the answers really they're looking for, so you're just going to sit there for a very long time. So you really, unless you've read about 250,000 pages of operations manual and understand HCB program in its entirety, you might be in for a hell of a wait, okay?